Hey everybody, and welcome to Time Extend. We're back again this week. You're listening to Adam Ismail, and with me, as always, is the wonderful
Brendan Rorison, and today, a bit less structured than usual, we'll be talking through some of the latest news, but there hasn't been much to talk about, and then we're just going to have a bit of a free-form conversation at the end about what could be coming next in the pod in terms of Sega Racing System and other things. So, yeah, it's been a bit of an empty news cycle since we did our last podcast, hasn't it, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, there's a regular, kind of cycle of GT Sport updates and Forza updates, and that's pretty much it. We're really looking forward to games like Forza Horizon 4, and I'm personally looking forward to F1 2018, but it honestly seems like kind of a dull year in general as far as looking out into the rest of 2018, but that's something that we'll talk about later on in the podcast for sure. For now, we'll start out with one of the only news items we're really talking about, which is something that we've wanted to discuss since the last time we had a show, which is just what the hell is going on at Codemasters Evo, and how disappointed we are to hear about what happened. If you haven't been paying attention to the news, probably about a month ago at this point, it was basically reported by Eurogamer that Codemasters Evo, who developed Onrush, that's a studio that used to be Evolution Studios that worked under Sony and developed Drive Club, then got bought out by Codemasters. They've seen significant layoffs, and the most critical, notable of which being Paul Rachinsky, who was the game director for Onrush. And according to the report, anonymous sources described the studio situation as having been, quote, decapitated by all of the downsizing. So, Brendan, I know you obviously have a lot more details to share on this, and you've been following the situation closely, but just obviously the worst case scenario we could have, we wished wouldn't happen to the studio.
Yeah, we'd be lying if we said we were surprised about this news. But the thing that was actually surprising was how fast this happened, because if you look at the timeline, Onrush was announced at a pretty big event at the PlayStation Experience, I believe it is, in Paris, and it was pretty hyped up. It got an actual trailer slot in that show. Most people associated it with MotorStorm from that point, for obvious reasons, the game's content at that time and the fact that it was in that PlayStation conference. And then we found out that it was Evo actually making it, and that was really cool, because after what happened with Drive Club and Sony, it was great to see these guys kind of found some feeting. And then there was that awkward time period where there was like no news for the game at all, and there was a genuine worry about how well it would perform. And then like we heard about the beta coming. People played the beta, they weren't that impressed for multiple reasons we've discussed prior in this podcast. And the game comes out, doesn't touch the top 40 in the UK alone, which is a pretty heavy racing game market. And then that is when the doubt started to seep in our minds. We discussed it. We were worried that the game takes too long to grab the audience that decided to purchase it, which means that it's hard to recommend to others. And then, almost out the blue so soon, we find out this has happened, where Codemasters has basically, let's be honest, they've basically defined it as a failed experiment at this point. You don't decapitate a team because something slightly underperforms. They obviously had higher expectations for Onrush, but I would question why they had those expectations if that's true, because this was always going to be an experimental game. Did they think it was going to be a hit right out the gates? I just don't know. It's mental to think that this soon after launch, half the team seems to have absolutely been killed off, essentially.
Yeah, I understand that this is a business, and I understand that you make incredible investments into, especially new IP like Onrush is, and risks, like a new IP that is kind of maybe difficult for people to grasp out of the gate. I mean, Onrush was definitely, in terms of adoption by the market, it was always going to be an uphill battle, because it was this unproven franchise that also was trying to do something very new and very different from anything that had come before. So, if that doesn't work out, I understand that it makes you more conservative, and it might make you question your judgment and whatnot, but at the same time, these people have been in the business, Codemasters, Evolution, everyone at the studio for a very long time, and I'm sure they were aware that something like this was, very likely to happen. And even with Evolution's best intentions, even with Rushy's, desire to bring something new to the market and shepherd this project, this always had to be in the back of everyone's minds as a strong possibility, because unfortunately you're working on a racing game, and racing games today they're not what they used to be. So the fact that Codemasters would turn around right after Onrush failed out of the gate and, almost like they were taken by surprise, decide like, nope, that's it, we're done, and then just cut the studio. It's amazing. Like, what did they expect? I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from here. It's like, if you wanted a sure thing, then why didn't you have them make Grid 3? Or why didn't you have them do anything else that was more obvious, or help out with dirt, or do something like that? I mean, to just, basically say you get one chance and you screwed it up, and now you're done. I don't know. It completely throws me for a loop, and I mean, I'm sure everyone at the studio.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is, like, you take a talented team like that on, you give their one shot at glory to a new IP with an established concept that goes against the grain of everything racing, and then you're a bit shocked when it doesn't set the world alight, especially when, and let's be frank here, it had a less than impressive marketing cycle. That like the most we had was the social media account, which would constantly tease announcements that weren't that special, and it means it kind of even now it's still happening with wherever ranked mode is. Like, we still don't have a ranked mode in the game. They've announced that there's a pre-season or whatever, but like, by the time the ranked season comes along, after this news especially, how many people are still going to be playing the game? And that kind of blame almost falls on Codemasters' shoulders for me too. You can, like, when news like this gets out, people's interest in a game is obviously going to drop, because they're going to be thinking, well, is it worth picking up? It's what happened to Split Second, and it's what happened to Blur as well, and it's just so, it was so obvious from the get-go that we would see another situation similar to those games. I mean, this is obviously, I'd love to make a comparison to Blur, because I love that game, but we've talked before about how Activision basically put a $40 million prize on the table for Bizarre Creations, saying, if Blur is the next Call of Duty for us in terms of racing, we'll give you this cash. But absolutely, then it was a total pendulum switch to, no, we're just going to can the company.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Arcade racing games just seem to get no leeway from bigger companies, and it's like you said, it's expensive to make a new IP. I can only imagine the cost for this game because of the technology that was involved as well. But questions have to be asked in terms of the business risk. If we're talking business, let's get into a business discussion then, because who thought the risk would have the payoff that they were looking for? Because nobody had heard of Onrush before. Everybody assumed it was a racing game, which it wasn't, and then it comes out, and what were Codemasters expecting? That is pretty.
Yeah, I mean, people didn't even know Onrush was a word. I thought it was something that they made up, and then Rushy posted the definition, like a Google definition of the word Onrush. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, it seemed so like not properly thought out, especially when you consider that this is Evolution Studios, unfortunately, closed by Sony, and every arcade racing fan out there, saw this, offer from Codemasters to take them on and kind of extend them a lifeline as, the best possible pairing. And it was like, okay, they have a safe home at Codemasters. And we all did assume that they would be working on a pretty safe project in the form of a new grid or a new dirt or whatever. And then to see them working on Onrush was like, okay, they're really, they're really bullish about this partnership, but I guess that makes sense. And then, yeah, you get one shot to make it work, and you don't. And something that's really telling is that the Codies, whoever this PR individual was, basically said to Eurogamer, and I have the quote here, in response to all of this news. It is normal course of business for game teams to evolve as projects launch and move into service. And as other projects and as other new projects start, as such, it isn't appropriate to comment on day-to-day movement of staff changes. Now, of course, they're never going to comment on day-to-day movement of staff changes, but painting this as a normal course of business for teams to evolve it twists the knife, really.
It's another example of like, if this wasn't the racing genre, this would be a lot bigger deal, this quote.
Oh, absolutely.
Codemaster should be thankful in that regard that the racing genre isn't like uber popular, because if this had came out from one of the bigger development houses, you'd have guys like Jim Sterling that live for this kind of stuff piggybacking off of it and creating that negative press. Because I'm sorry, that is utter bullcrap. Like, you can't say decapitating a studio, not my words, is a normal course of business for a new IP 3 weeks into its release cycle. Like, come on.
And Codemasters has expressed, I mean, you're absolutely right, and Codemasters has expressed this kind of bad judgment, in my opinion, many times in the past. I think if you look at their output from like the mid to late 2000s, it was like they were really onto something with the first Dirt and the first Grid. And then they decided, and Dirt 2, I would even say, a lot of people kind of were bothered by the Ken Block focused nature of the game, but I think it sold really, really well and got the series to continue. But then you look at some of their decisions, like there was a time between like Dirt Showdown and F1 Race Stars and Grid 2 had come out, and then they're doing Grid All Sport, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, I enjoy seeing as many racing games as possible, but at the end of the day, no one, and again, this is a genre that is shrinking, if anything. No one I knew was excited for Dirt Showdown or F1 Race Stars or even Grid Autosport, which by every indication, I've played a little bit of the game, looks like it would have been fine as Grid 2, but for some reason wasn't Grid 2.
Not only that, but it was only released on the prior gen consoles.
And only released on the prior gen consoles. Yeah, so it just, they started playing out a lot of games that were just like very questionable decisions, and then in response to that, we see the team or we see the studio overall kind of their output after that space, and like, maybe like whether it was like 2011, 2012, 2013 really slowed after that. We got Dirt Rally and we kept getting F1 games, and that's been it. And Dirt 4 obviously was supposed to be, that was supposed to bring the series back to its prime time, and then we haven't gotten, there was no DLC, there was no post-launch support. We were told there would be, or there would be something to look forward to. Instead, we kind of got this shell of a game that had a decent, track building system, but not something that really, it was something that had to be built upon. And I think what we're seeing, the moral of the story here is that Codemasters doesn't want to put that investment in. So if they don't want to put that investment in with their established franchises, why are we shocked that this happened to Onrush?
Well, I mean, and there's one title, it's very arcadey, but we had the pleasure, and use that term loosely, of playing. Yes. That was Micro Machines World Series.
How could I forget? I reviewed that game.
Yeah, and what does that say? This is one of their most established franchises that, if done right, as shown with Toy Box Turbos when they briefly lost the license, if they do it right enough, it'll have a decent community who enjoy the game. But instead, we just got product placement up the ass and an absolute half-hearted attempt at bringing back a beloved series. And to bring it back to the main games, like Dirt 4 was fine. I reviewed the game and gave it a 3.5. That's probably me being a little bit generous, but like, it was a good game, but like we keep talking about, it didn't seem as if the investment was there. The menus seemed really cheap, and making the whole game based around your stage was strange. When like, I get it, you want to show off that new feature, but it wasn't strong enough to hold the whole game. And they kind of ruined the sim handling from Dirt Rally as well, in my opinion anyway.
You know what's interesting? When you look at Onrush and then you look at Dirt 4, Onrush seems like much more of a AAA product.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the thing. I think Dirt 4 was very similar to the output you see from like Milestone and Big Ben and those types of guys. It did feel like I'll be honest, when Dirt 3 came out, I was one of the moaners about the Ken Block-isms in the game, but that game has 10 times more character than Dirt 4. It has it in spades, and I still enjoyed it properly, even with the little bits of annoyance I had. Compared to Dirt 4, it's like comparing water to Pepsi, basically.
Yeah, no,
there's nothing to Dirt 4 in terms of personality.
Dirt 3 was fantastic. I mean, Dirt 3 had... They did, I mean, even with the Ken Block-isms, they scaled that back from Dirt 2, where it was literally the entire game. And Dirt 3 had a ton of content. And I think we all expected that entering the generation that we're in now, that, you know, Codemasters would had figured it out and would continue that success that they'd had with Dirt and Grid and whatnot. And it never happened, which is amazing because I really think it just went wrong with just the planning. Like something, maybe they're just very reticent when it comes to like doing what people expect, but almost to a fault, because they end up taking chances that they're actually in no way confident enough to take, obviously, as we've seen, and it just sets them back. It always seems to be one step forward and two steps back with them. And now, I mean, I guess, again, according to the report, basically what we're going to see from Evolution, from Codemasters Evo, is that they're going to be supporting other Codies teams, or on, quote unquote, less risky projects, which thinking about what Codemasters does, I can't imagine that's going to be anything substantial. It's probably going to be whatever Micro Machines thing they take a bet on next. You know, if they're not going to make a full-on game, if their head count has been, I hate those freaking decapitation analogies I make. If they are significantly downsized and they're not equipped to work on, you know, a full a AAA style experience like we would expect from Codemasters. So really, what are they going to do? They've pumped out some Onrush updates, interestingly, since all of this has happened, and some substantial ones. So we'll see how far that goes, but I think it's all, unfortunately, very up in the air.
The thing is, you did bring up how happy everybody was to hear that Evo had found another home against all odds. But I just don't see from Codemasters' perspective how this investment made sense when they were so quick to kind of half the team, because what is going on with Grid? Like, what is the situation there? It's a franchise people like, even with 2, which kind of divided people. It was still reasonably popular. We're nearly done this console cycle, realistically speaking. Probably got another 2 years.
Yeah,
is it because it's too ambitious? Did they see it's too ambitious? I don't understand.
I don't get it, because, you know, the racing genre, as we've said, there's nothing sure here anymore. There's no bet, you know, there's no safe bet except for like Forza Horizon in terms of this will sell really well. But Grid seemed to betray that and seemed to be... I don't know what the numbers on Grid 2 are. I should. I mean, I imagine it wasn't enormously successful. I mean, the first one was very successful, but like Grid seemed to be something that you could always rely on, at least getting a lot of technical praise, which could, you know, the niche nature of the genre could kind of transition well into decent sales with the core group. But I don't know. Grid seemed like some obvious thing that they should keep doing, and then they haven't. And yeah, it really makes no sense. I mean, it's kind of amazing that they've almost become like, and this is a very sad way to put it, but they've almost become like the EA of racing games. When you look at, oh, we're just gonna make F1 every year, and that's basically gonna be it now. Why take a chance? Why do anything else? You know, and especially F1 with the license. With the amount that license has to cost and all of the demands of the license, I can't imagine that's an ideal situation for Codemasters to, you know, rake in as much as possible. So it's, I don't know. It seems, I don't want to be that kind of armchair, you know, business guy of like, hey, I know what you should do. Make Dirt 5 and Grid 3 and stop complaining. And, you know, maybe you'll have a little bit more in the coffer for something like Onrush to not gut the studio the second that they don't do what you want them to. But again, the established franchises that they have, the established names that people know and love and respect and want to see more of, are consistently squandered. And it makes no sense.
Exactly. I just looked up Grid 2 sales, and in the UK it actually sat atop the UK charts for 2 weeks running, beating out FIFA 13. So
yeah, okay.
It was a high seller.
So that seems like something you should do again. That seems like a good idea. But yeah, my takeaway is, and it does actually, it reminds me a lot of, because we talk a lot about Sega on this podcast, it does remind me a lot of how Sega's had terrible judgment, towards the latter end of their days as a hardware maker, and basically decided, like, Shinobi, Golden Axe, all the franchises that people love, like, we're not going to make those anymore. And then, they were basically starting from nothing. It's like, in this business, you have to take, we like you to take chances as fans. We want to see you take chances, but the only way those chances get to be taken is if you have some sort of established, unfortunately, if you have some sort of established form of income in, a game that will sell well. Codemasters has consistently decided not to go that route, so it doesn't really look like the situation can get better. But, that's one takeaway. And then the other takeaway for me, as you said, Brendan, is just like, why were you so quick to snap them up if you were also going to be so quick to shut them down?
Exactly. You don't snap up a talented team like that, green light a very ambitious project they have in mind, and then happily just kind of throw away half the team at the end if it doesn't meet your expectations. Because, I'm thinking on this from Codemasters' perspective, they've really took an L here, because they're the ones that are going to lose out on a lot of good talent.
Yeah, definitely. When you look at, I remember you telling me about your impressions about the Onrush beta, and I didn't play very much of the beta, but you were just like, the game felt like a mess. It didn't feel polished. It just didn't feel right. It was running at 30 frames for some reason, and just nothing was right. And then, the game comes out like a month or so later, and I play it, and I'm like, this is fantastic. And you're like, yeah, that's because they turned it around from the beta in such a way that you didn't expect, and from what I've seen online, a lot of people didn't expect. And yeah, it speaks to Evolution's ability to pump out those kinds of experiences even without Sony's backing and the pedigree of a first-party developer. They went to Codemasters and they made a game that was really special. That even regardless of how poorly the game sells or what happens in the future to a studio, I think whoever played Onrush will remember it on both, in a good way and a bad way, as another Blur or another Split Second. But yeah, to take that team and then just completely splinter them now, it's a shame that we're not going to see the same group working together again in the future, because I think that's really what a lot of fans of this genre want to see.
Yeah, exactly, because even, the most natural progression for me wouldn't have been getting rid of half the team. It would have been saying, well guys, we tried with Onrush, it looked great, people really want a core racing experience, so let's just totally rip off MotorStorm and give the people what they want.
Yeah.
Not what I would want. You know how I feel about MotorStorm. But like, oh my, it's free money on the table. Even make it a Dirt spin-off if you have to. Like
yeah.
Dirt Extreme, something like that. Just
Yeah, there are loads of dormant racing games that they could have ripped off. They could have made a straight up Burnout successor. They could have made a straight up MotorStorm successor. There's so many different directions that they could have gone to if they wanted to make something different that wasn't being made now. If they really felt like we've done Grid to death and we need something else, like they easily could go make a MotorStorm and just not call it that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people thought Onrush was.
in a weird way, I never quite understood why people love MotorStorm so much. Not because I thought it was you didn't like very much. I thought it was fine, but like, at least in the US, I don't remember anyone playing it. I mean, maybe it was big in the UK and other parts of the world, but I feel like it was very, very overlooked over here.
I think it's unfortunately like another bomb by Evo, which is sad because like I don't think they've ever made a bad game. Like, you could argue all day about the way Drive Club launched and if it deserved any form of success after that, but like every single game they've made, I have enjoyed to a certain extent. Even MotorStorm. Like,
what was the game you just mentioned?
Drive Club.
Oh, Drive Club, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Drive Club, yeah, so like even with the way that launched, you could see why some people would have been a bit miffed with it, but they rescued it really well, and yeah, I don't think they've made a game that I haven't enjoyed to a certain extent, put it that way, and now I can't wait for the Evo team that was canned to make Excite Truck 2, because that's definitely happening.
Yeah. Yeah, Onrush was okay, but what they really should have ripped off was Excite Truck.
Excite Truck or Shocks, take your pick, Paul.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens going forward with Evo, obviously, and you know, it kind of feels a little. It feels like a sour note to end on, but yeah, we really just don't know, and until that happens, we'll be clutching our copies of Onrush and softly sobbing.
It'll take its place nicely in the library of could have been games right beside Blur, Split Second, and Shocks. So
yeah.
And right. Mod Nation Racers. It's a bit different.
I don't know if Mod Nation Racers deserves to be up there, but nevertheless, Tetsuyo should also still be around. So we are going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with lots of randomness.
Look forward to it.
And we're back, and as we said in the beginning of the show, this is just going to be kind of a fireside chat with your friends Adam and Brendan. Just going to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about related to racing games and such. Usually we do the Sega Racing Studio, or Sega Racing system here. I mean, there's another studio that we miss. Yeah. But... and it's not something that we have to do every time we do a show, but Brendan has not gotten a new Dreamcast game for a while because the market for Dreamcast games isn't always as inexpensive as we wish it was. So you wanted to know where to go next, right?
Yep, correct. Obviously, we want to try and get a game that will get some good discussion going, and there's, as we've talked about before, it's weird, the Dreamcast did have a lot of kind of third-party racing games that would inspire discussion. So what pops into your head, Adam? Is that a place we could go next for the next podcast?
I suspect you know what I'm going to say, because I've said it every time we've done this show, which is Test Drive Le Mans, aka Le Mans 24 Hours.
So that's an awkward one, because like for no apparent reason, the resellers really rate that game very highly. You're looking at the...
It's because it's amazing.
Yeah. Onrush is fell in price faster than Test Drive Le Mans.
Oh no, that's so sad.
So yeah, it's like on eBay, if you have a look, there's like obviously for the PAL region copies, it kind of hovers around the £30 mark, which is absolutely mad, because the only other games I see that kind of touch that price range are Power Stone 2 and Shenmue. Everything else is kind of around £20 to less, so yeah, unfortunately for now, I think we're going to have to shelf that one until I find other ways to get hold of it.
That seems kind of low for Shenmue. But I mean, the fact that Test Drive is up there among its ranks is something I can take solace in. I mean, my feelings on Test Drive Le Mans are just that, like, it's the best racing game on a system made by Sega, which is, like, how you achieve that, it's just mind-boggling to me. But yeah, I mean, I love that game to death. If you're not going to play that, and we've already explored the terribleness that is Sega GT, Ferrari F355 Challenge, I'd say that's a good, really, really simple. I mean, it's interesting because it's an arcade game, but it's also a sim racer, kind of melded into one in a way that, like, never happened before or after that. That's a fun game, very, very quick and simple. That will mostly be a discussion probably about the physics. And if you're not going to talk about that, yeah, I mean, we still got to do that Tokyo Racer pod, don't we? Tokyo Highway Battle.
Yeah, still got to do that.
Yeah. Or you could talk about the first game, and the second one also is hard to get, but fortunately I have it, so I could talk about that.
Yeah, the second one's one of those games we talked about that for some reason, in terms of price, it's in the kind of upper echelon, whereas the first game can be found for pretty cheap, so... Yeah, I think the Ferrari game sounds like a good one. Looking at the prices as well, it's relatively cheap and available pretty easily, so I just have to pick the seller, and then we could look into that next.
What about Daytona USA 2001?
Oh, so this is a weird one. Once again, for some reason, of all the games, that Daytona port, I'm looking now, PAL version, fully boxed, £42.
Jesus. I mean, have you never spent that much on an old game? Because I definitely have before. I'm not telling you to do it for a purpose of the show. You don't have to do that, but I know this stuff's expensive. But there have been a couple times where I've made an exception. Now, obviously, I wouldn't suggest that you do that maybe on Daytona 2001 because it's not that good. But on another more deserving game, Test Drive, I think it might be well worth it.
Yeah, I think I've just got to break down the door effectively of spending too much money on old games. I think once I do it once, that'll be it. I'll be buying every expensive game ever in existence for the Dreamcast, so it's just a case of breaking that wall down. So we'll go with Ferrari F355 for now, and then after that I think it'll be time to try and hunt down a copy of Test Drive so that you can stop bugging me about it.
The best thing about the Dreamcast is it only has like 6 games in its entire library, so you don't have to worry about spending too much money. It's why I love being a Sega fan as opposed to a Nintendo fan, because there really isn't that much to buy, and also it's the company doesn't hate its fans and removes ROMs from the internet, but that's another story. So yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about F355 is that it also got a PlayStation 2 port.
I've seen that.
Yeah, did that see release in the UK? Because it came out here, but very, very quietly.
It seems like it did, because I just found a PAL copy of the PS2 game there once I was ordering my Dreamcast one, which is now ordered, so I can confirm that will be our next one.
Yeah, give me the tracking number, or else it didn't count. Whatever. The PS2, the PS2 port of F355 is interesting because I think it was basically like all of the games that Sega released at the end of the Dreamcast lifespan, which honestly was like the entire lifespan of Dreamcast was the end of its lifespan because it was only like a year or like a year and a half. They decided to port some of those games with the help of third-party studios to the PS2, and F355 was one of them. But the weird thing about that game is that it was very... I mean, at least for me, it's very hard. It was very hard to find. For years, it was like one of my holy grails of like going to a retro game shop and trying to find it. And I went everywhere looking for that game. And it's not even that expensive online. I mean, I think it's like $20 or $30, which is like more than you feel like you should have to pay, but it's not the end of the world. But just randomly, I was in a store, probably like a year ago at this point, and managed to find it in a way I wasn't expecting at all, in a place that really didn't have a wide selection. So that was pretty surprising, and I played it and finally could experience the exact same game that I liked on the Dreamcast, but on the PS2.
Yeah, that is pretty cool that it did end up getting released on the PS2 as well.
Yeah, I don't really think there are any differences outside of the fact that it has a chase cam, but that's why am I spoiling our Sega Racing system? I'm gonna shut up now. Now, you played something recently that you were talking to me about on the Switch.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So, basically, I picked up a copy of Bandai Namco's Go Vacation, which for people who are unacquainted, and I imagine there's a lot, it's basically a minigame collection that originally came out on the Wii, and it was held in pretty high regard. I think that's why it got a Switch port. It's plenty of minigames, most are crap, but like
it's held in high regard. The minigames suck.
But well, that's like any minigame collection though. The reason we like some are because they've got 3 or 4 good games, and that's kind of the case with
that's
Go
true.
Vacation.
Yeah.
There's like a really good jet ski game which is reminiscent of Wave Race, and there's like snowboarding, which is a lot like Cool Boarders on the PlayStation 1. There's like stuff like that. But one of the most interesting parts is there's like so just to explain how the game's set up, basically it's like a massive holiday resort where there's like 4 key areas. So there's the mountain range, the beach, what's the other one? It's like island or something, which seems pretty close to beach. And then there's the metro area. And then the metro area is where you get like your Tony Hawk style mini games and stuff. But there's like a literal racetrack in the middle of the metro zone where you race actual cars. Now, why this is interesting is because with it being developed by Bandai Namco, they effectively just lifted the mechanics from the Ridge Racer that must have came previously and placed it into this game. Sound effects and boost systems included. So what you effectively got on Switch isn't Ridge Racer 8, but like Ridge Racer Lite basically, and there's like different track layouts and stuff. So like there's like 6 different track layouts, and at least 4 of them are just lifted from other Ridge Racer games.
Really? See, I didn't know some of the tracks were from older games.
Yeah, so like the background and stuff always looks the same because, like I said, it's like an open world, so it's just the track layout. But you've got like 765 in there and other
that's
variants,
cool.
and
Now I want to look at.
Honestly, I'll show you some more gameplay because it is really rad. And like rival cars and stuff will have like the team names of other Ridge Racer companies, and you'll see like going billboards for like Junaid and that type of thing. And yeah, you've got so many little nods to Ridge Racer, and the most obvious one isn't there in terms of the music, which was a bit of a disappointment. There's no Ridge Racer music tracks in there.
And that's the easiest thing to put in the game.
Exactly.
That's so disappointing.
Yeah. They've got the announcer from 6, I believe, the Xbox 360 game.
Okay.
They've got the boost systems, so like once you beat the beginner race, it opens up other boost types, so you can change between the drift and the auto regen and that type of thing. And yeah, it's like this. Like, I didn't know this was here. To be perfectly honest, I didn't know this minigame was in it. So when I started it, and like, you know that way, it's almost surreal. Your brain works out what the physics are, and then it clicks like a second later. Like, holy shit, this is just Ridge Racer.
Yeah, and it makes sense because Ridge Racer is actually pretty like, especially the more recent ones, and by recent, I'm still going back almost 10 years. They are pretty easy to play. There's not much you really have to think about. But yeah, I had seen something on Go Vacation not long before you mentioned that to me, and I don't know. I honestly discounted it because I was like, well, it looks like they put a Ridge Racer car and some sound effects and a boost gauge in there, and it's not really Ridge Racer. But
no,
you know, having a favorable experience with it, coupled with the fact that like the last 3 Ridge Racers sucked, it makes it seem like it's just as viable an entry in the series as any other. So
that is a sad fact.
Yeah.
There's something about the minigame that makes you realise and put in perspective just how little the franchise has evolved, and that kind of made me a bit sad that it can be like a minigame as part of like 50 others, which include things that are literally like moving the controller into like shadows while you're like dropping from the sky, like a skydive type thing. Like Bandai Namco consider Ridge Racer on the same wavelength as that. That's what we can gather from Go Vacation. Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it was so random to see that, and
that's cool.
I mean, I was happy enough with the references, like seeing billboards with the team names and stuff, like the Terrazzi and stuff, like that would have been enough for me, but finding out there's like a micro Ridge Racer in there was really cool, and it made me wonder, like, can you imagine we got a game like in the guise of like micro machines, but it's a Ridge Racer game? I think that would be really cool, and that's what it kind of made me think about the idea of like tiny Ridge Racer cars, because obviously in the game the cars look like kind of toy cars rather than the full size ones in the actual games. So yeah, it's just a pretty cool bit of trivia that was hidden in there, and hopefully that wasn't what the guy in LinkedIn who had Ridge Racer for
I was going to say, do we think that was Ridge Racer 8? Because at this point it may as well have been.
Oh wow, that'd be a Shyamalan style twist to that.
Oh, that would be terrible, but probably what happened. Yeah, it did get me thinking about my favorite racing mini games and otherwise not racing games, and something that comes to mind is I used to have a lot of fun with the racing games in Super Monkey Ball.
Oh,
did you ever play those? Great. Yeah. The controlling was weird because, like, I mean, the steering was strange because it's Super Monkey Ball, obviously, so you're moving the stage and not the monkey. But yeah, I mean, I guess that made it actually kind of, unique and frustrating because those games aren't, the whole nature of it is that it's hard to get the ball to go where you want it to go. But yeah, with all power-ups and stuff, I actually had a really fun time playing that game.
I think that's indicative of Monkey Ball in general. In the earlier games, at least the mini games were a lot better than they'd any right to be. I can remember spending hours playing Monkey Target.
Monkey Target's fantastic,
Race. Yeah.
Billiards were good too. Bowling was fun. There was the fight game where you had to punch each other off the platform. Like, there were a lot of great games. And the racing one was pretty good. The racing one was actually, like, when you think about it, it's probably like the most I don't know, the most like intensive one or whatever, because like it's a full-on game. Like, you have like 3 or 4 stages or something, like tracks, and then you have a full suite of power-ups, and the tracks are all very different. And I think there was like a championship mode too. Like, it was, it was basically like a mini Mario Kart in there. So
yeah, I remember playing it like way too long for what it really should have been. Like, it was just that, to be honest, I'm a bit of a Monkey Ball fanboy in general.
Oh, I love Monkey Ball. It's so good.
So good. And those
Monkey Ball is like the puzzle. Yeah, Monkey Ball is like it's like the puzzle. I mean, it's not really a puzzle game, but I consider it like the puzzle game that a racing game fan would like, because it involved there are physics in Monkey Ball, and you are steering in a 3D space, and that makes it kind of like a racing game. I mean, honestly, the main game, like the purpose of the main game in Monkey Ball is to finish the stage as quickly as possible. So yeah, it is almost kind of like a racing game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about dead genres when we're talking about the racing series, but the whole marble rolling thing as well, that's kind of fell off a cliff. And
that was fun.
I mean, I know technically speaking, we just discussed it, like, you weren't moving the ball in Monkey Ball, but yeah, I mean, it'd be great to see that series make some form of comeback. I know, like, Sega made a few games during their Brown Age, as they like to call it.
The first game,
really bad games.
The first game I think I had on my 360, on my Xbox 360 after PGR 3. Well, I think it was PGR 3, and then everybody got Geometry Wars, right? And then there was like a drought for a while. There was like nothing, and I got Marble Blast Ultra. It was like one of the first Xbox Live Arcade games, and that game was a blast. And I am only now realizing the pun in what I just said, but it was really good. And it kind of like scratched the itch for a new Monkey Ball, because at the time Monkey Ball wasn't really doing anything. But
they made that weird open world platformer, Monkey Ball Adventure.
Oh yeah, I never played that, but I heard it was god awful.
Terrible, absolutely terrible.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have to do an episode specifically on ball rolling based games.
Well, judging on what's coming in the near future for the genre.
We might have to
be closer than we think.
Wait, you're not pumped for V-Rally 4? We finally got a launch date, and it's coming September 25th. I read that backwards. September 6th on the PS4 and Xbox One, September 25th on the PC. And as for the Switch version that we are very much looking forward to, it's TBA.
You're kidding. A Switch version coming out later than its counterparts, and it doesn't have a release date. That's new.
Yeah. To continue the theme of V-Rally being Audacia Sandero, I mean, you too, we're looking forward to the Switch port, kind of, because, you know, it could be the first decent non-Mario Kart racing game on the Switch, but also, obviously, the one that they would delay if they had to delay a version, so I'm not particularly excited for the, you know, the full-on home console versions. But I really hope that they get the Switch one out relatively soon afterwards, because I'd like to play it. I'd like to give it a try.
To make it relevant, they have to get it out before the end of the year. That's my call. They won't be able to justify a full price release for a game that will probably be half price 3 weeks after launch on other consoles.
Yeah, that's true, and I hope they keep the extreme Kana mode for the Switch one as well.
Oh, they will. But just speaking of the fact that would be the first proper racing game on Switch, have you heard of Super Street the game by any chance?
No, but I saw right before we recorded this, I saw you tweet something about it. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. So it wasn't something I was paying attention to either until I randomly stumbled upon this on Amazon. But basically, Super Street's like a magazine for like, tuning enthusiasts, I believe. And the game's like kind of the MO of the game is essentially they've got like 800 customizable parts for your car, and that includes like seats, steering wheels, too many body kits to mention, and all of that tuning will probably be wrapped in a subpar racing experience. It's just my prediction, but it's really
cool. Could that
cool
be the quote on the back of the box? 800 customization parts wrapped in the subpar racing experience.
Maybe I've been a bit harsh, but it's been made by a no-name studio, so it's better to not get hopes up. But like, I love the idea of having like a dedicated tuning experience for like cars and stuff. So I was kind of partly interested in it when it got announced for Steam, PS4, and Xbox One. And then I was on Amazon UK looking at the upcoming Switch games, and they seem pretty certain that there's a Switch port complete with actual box art. They haven't just placeholdered it. They've got a full description that mentions the Nintendo Switch and the release date for 30th of November, which would be a month and a half after the launch of the other versions. So maybe it's just a mistake, but that seems pretty strange that Amazon would have dedicated box art, have a description that mentions Nintendo Switch complete with the trademark to show it's an actual release, like a press release, and a release date, oddly, that isn't just the 31st of December.
Now, see, here's the thing, Brendan. I have bad news for you, because I just typed in Super Street the game on Google, and the first results are videos from a gentleman named Black Panther, and the titles of the videos are Super Street the game ... is this a joke? Super Street the game. Here's another one. Super Street the game gameplay ... bad news. So there's at least one guy on YouTube who really doesn't like this game. Somebody else by the name of LP Ripper 24 TV, in all caps, a video. What if Super Street the game is not what you expected? So apparently apparently there are people who are monitoring this game very closely, and they're none too pleased with it.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to say I'm shocked. I just find it interesting that Amazon seems to have made a Switch version of the game that I'd mentioned anywhere else.
This is weird, though. So I'm actually looking at gameplay, and it's I'm assuming it's from July, so I think it's from the PC or the PS4 version or something like that. And what this guy is doing is he is modifying an R34 Skyline.
Right.
But the interesting thing about this is the different parts that you can put on the car are actually parts from other cars. So you can put Corvette C7 taillights on R34 Skyline. You can also put Supra taillights from like the late 90s Supra on a Skyline. It's very strange and disconcerting. Or like GTR, like R35 style taillights too. It's very weird. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it actually looks kind of cool because there's kind of this there's this exploded view when you're modifying the cars, and you can actually see all the parts pop out. Not unlike one of the best games ever made, V-Rally 3, how you could explode all of the panels on the car in the car select. And of course, I'm not at all being facetious when I say one of the best games ever. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not very good. But there might be something in this customization because. Oh, this guy put a subwoofer in his car. Look at that.
Oh my god. I'm just watching some race gameplay and it looks like Cruising. Like, see one of those like, arcade versions of Cruising?
Yeah.
But it's not a surprise. Like, I expected it to drive like trash, but like, I don't know, there's something interesting about the idea of just making cars for the sake of it to that degree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things we say would have been interested in Sega GT if it was playable. So if we actually get the chance to go in depth and finally give a Corvette lights from a Dacia Sandero, then maybe it'll be worth the purchase.
I mean, it reminds me a lot of games like that we used to see so much of, like Juiced and Street Racing Syndicate. And to be honest, none of those games were ever very good. But I guess the bar was lower back then, so I can't imagine that it's worse than that. Something that's pretty funny is actually if you scroll down on one of these videos, you know how YouTube does that thing where it auto recognizes the game or the content you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's actually it recognized Super Street the game as Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix.
Fantastic.
So yeah, look forward to that if you want to play a racing game on your Switch.
Oh, a bit of live news on the podcast. An event photo has leaked for Forza Horizon 4 that shows the Warthog from Halo, which is fair enough. But in the event photo, there's also like a huge spaceship in the background from Halo, and like the kind of rising structure they showed in the Halo Infinite trailer. Don't know if you've seen that, Adam.
Oh wow, yeah, that's weird.
I'll link you up now so you can have a quick look at it. But yeah, it's nothing major, but it's pretty interesting that it looks like Halo will be collaborating with Forza again.
Is this canonical? Based on this, can we expect the next Halo to take place in the UK?
I just imagining Master Chief going to Nando's.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man! All right, so very crucial non-racing game discussion here. I had to go to Chicago for business almost 2 weeks ago, and Chicago is one of the only cities in the U.S. that has Nando's. So I got to have my first Nando's since 2013, and it was glorious. I was worried. Man. I was worried it wouldn't stack up to what my memories had built up in my head, but it was really good. And I also took 3 other journalists with me to go there, and I think they were all pleased and gave it high marks. So, yeah, Nando's, you have more fans in the U.S., which makes it even more criminal that you don't have a franchise in New York yet. So get on that.
The weird thing is, like in the UK, we are pretty much getting like all your big established food places now. So we're getting a Denny's in Glasgow. We got a Taco Bell last year,
I'm so sorry. Denny's is trash.
But like, maybe this is a trade, so you guys get Nando's, and I'm happy to take the hit if it means that you can get your chicken butterfly hit whenever you want it.
I mean, what's the general feeling towards Nando's? Is it just like over there? Is it like you've had it for so long it's all over the place? Is it ubiquitous? Because like over here, like you can't walk 2 feet in a major city without encountering a Starbucks. That's not to say people don't still like going to Starbucks and enjoy it, but it is kind of like it's almost like wallpaper at this point. Like is that what Nando's is like over there?
Yeah, it's like really good wallpaper.
Yeah, okay.
It's pretty much like if you want good quality food, but you don't want to go to like an actual restaurant, Nando's is the default, because it's great chicken. Everybody likes it here, but you're right in the sense that the kind of novelty factor of it wore off like years ago, basically. So now it's just like, it's the default. If you're out with your friends, Nando's is the place to go, because like nobody doesn't like Nando's, put it that way.
Yeah, I don't know how you could. It's amazing. They sell the sauce in like various supermarkets and stuff in the US, and I've tried to make it myself. I mean, it's good. It has the general flavor of Nando's, but it can never be quite the same.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same. I've always tried making it myself in the house, but it's never worth it, man. Like I funnily enough, I had a Nando's this week because I was in Edinburgh with work and got to use those expenses, boy.
Oh yeah.
Straight to Nando's. I got like the butterfly chicken with garlic bread, peri salted chips, and 10 hot wings. It's delicious.
Wow. Yeah, the first time I went to Nando's, because I am a notoriously picky eater, although I'm a bit better now. I used to be like really picky when I was younger. So I would like when I went to England, I was like not having that, not having that, not having that. And when we went to Nando's, I was like, oh, chicken and rice and potatoes, like all the things that I eat. So I was very happy. But then I responded because I hadn't eaten. I didn't have the best diet when I was over there. So my response to that was the first time I went to Nando's, I think I dropped like 40 pounds, like eating just nonstop. It was so good. I didn't regret it at all. It was amazing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, seeing the UK, everybody makes such a big deal out of like Krispy Kreme and Taco Bell and that type of thing. But in the US, it's probably just like a normality at this point. But it's the same with Nando's here. Like, we're used to Nando's, but like hearing you go on about it as if it's this amazing thing, which is true, is strange because it's like a total role reversal to the way people pay like £12 for 6 fucking donuts over here from Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, although I think it's a little, I don't think it's quite the same comparison, because it seems like everyone loves Nando's, even if it is a bit, you know, if everyone kind of knows what it is over there, it's a known quantity and it's not as exciting anymore. It seems like all around the world people love Nando's, and I'm not gonna say all around the world people don't love Krispy Kreme, but I don't know. Like Krispy Kreme, it's weird because they don't have the same like staying power in the U.S. as like, I guess, your Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin' Donuts is, I guess, really only our donut chain. So like, but you see probably like on a daily basis 15 Dunkin' Donuts for every one Krispy Kreme. So it's like the idea somebody's gonna go out of their way for Krispy Kreme, like, it's okay. Like, I mean, it's good, but it's not like, you know, it's not Nando's chicken is basically what I'm saying. Krispy Kreme does not make Nando's chicken.
Well, I mean, people here literally queue at midnight for Krispy Kreme openings.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sad.
I mean, I hope that our cultural offerings are half as good as yours, but I suspect they never will be.
But it's like, it's the novelty factor of it. That's why we have like Americandy stores, basically they're called, and it's like people pay like £1.90 for like a can of Mountain Dew and just crazy stuff like that, because I think the novelty alone sells it. Like, you guys get genuinely good chicken getting imported across, but we get to pay £2.50 for mint M&Ms, which should be a thing everywhere. Just a point I would like to make.
Yeah, those crazy M&M flavors that come out with, they're good. But yeah, so in case you forgot what you were listening to, this is Time Extend, the Racing Game Podcast, and I'm gonna bring it back on target because I haven't watched this video of the Forza Horizon 4 stream they recently had, because you had mentioned like, oh, they're driving around Edinburgh, and I'm looking at it now, and it's pretty cool. I haven't watched it before. You said,
yeah, it looks great.
So it's pretty faithful.
Oh, very much so. That street, the kind of main one with the castle in the background and the pillars, is it's called Princess Street, and that's like the most iconic part of Edinburgh. And that's where I was staying in my hotel, funnily enough, earlier this week. And I was just saying to you prior to the start of the podcast, Adam, like, it's weird seeing a Scottish location recreated so well, because it doesn't tend to happen very often, to be honest. For the amount of good vistas and stuff we have here, the best in recent times was Not Kill in Project Cars 2, which is once
Not
again
Kill.
another good comparison. Yeah.
all the great all the great cities of the world, and then Scotland gets Not Kill.
It's just really funny because like every other track in that game looks majestic and it's got like all these high profile sponsors and stuff, and then like on the final turn at Not Kill it's like Livingston Computer Repair or something.
Oh my
It's
god,
like,
I love that.
it's like
I
this
love
tiny
that.
warehouse on the edge of an industrial estate that's now like immortalised in Project Cars 2.
There's nothing more I love than like the idea of like Polyphony Digital or Turn 10 or, you know, just these teams of people who are experts at what they do, traveling the world to different locations, and it all comes down to making that JPEG of Livingston Computer Repair on the final corner of Knock Hill. I love that that is something that is like specific to this genre, that is like inescapable. No matter how good you are, no matter what you make, you will still have to make their logo.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same as well. Like I can't remember if it was Gran Turismo 6 or the first Project Cars, but like in Bathurst in the last corner, there was like that huge like pedigree dog chum like advertising they had at the time, and it's just like recreated with ridiculous detail, and I just imagine like the amount of time they would have spent creating like a dog chum advertising board at the end of that track.
And like it's a big brand, but in here in the States it's Sargento cheese. But I always love how when you're at Road America in Forza games for a while, there would always be that Sargento cheese truck.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I love stuff like that. But yeah, I'm looking at the gameplay now. It's really good. It did remind me of like, I love the idea that that Playground got Edinburgh reasonably, or they got it pretty accurate. Meanwhile, Ubisoft made this like freakish Frankenstein version of New York that like just it's the like uncanny valley of weirdness.
Yeah, it's just like an episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah, it's like everything. It's like the random parts of the city are like they're all there, but they're like jumbled about in a weird mess, and they're not quite where you should be. It's like a dream state, honestly. That's what I get from a lot of the cities and the crew. It's like when you have a dream about like being in your house, but like everything's in a different place, and also it's not your house at all, but you think it's your house.
I think that's one thing that Playground managed to do well. Like they recreate specific areas, and then around that they don't try and give the pretense it still looks like the real place. So like if you look at Horizons Australia, they've got like Surfer's Paradise and all those types of things recreated reasonably, but like once you exit that area it's just like a generic kind of driveway, and I think that's fine because it doesn't create that uncanny effect like you were saying. Like, the crew tries so hard to come across like the full America, and it was never going to be.
Yeah, it's just too ambitious for what it's trying to do. I mean, all this stuff makes me wish though that like, granted, a lot of Playground staff I believe is from Bazaar and worked on PGR, but like I just miss those games because for so many reasons. I mean, they were like my favorite for a while. You know, the PGR series was probably my favorite arcade racers, and it just the detail at which they tried to, you know, at which they recreated cities and whatnot, and you know, as many as like they had like something like 5 or 6 cities in PGR 4, I think, but they had so many in PGR 2, and like tons of different areas around the world, like with kind of this. They go around and take photos and like get every street right and recreate it. You could actually go to New York in the first Project Gotham Racing. I did this a couple months ago, and I started working in New York last October, and they recreated Midtown Manhattan. So I went to Bryant Park, which is like one of the anytime you see people ice skating in New York City, they're doing it at Bryant Park, and my office is right basically across the street from one of the sides of Bryant Park. It's like I was able to drive there. It's like in this game that was made, you know, 15 or Jesus, like 17 years ago. It's just really cool. So I don't know. I just miss I miss PGR. I just miss that.
Yeah, it was a great series, and just brings us. It's funny, we've almost come full circle on this podcast now, talking about another franchise that won't be seen again. It's just a shame that the ones that really did add that extra bit of detail and had a bit of extra heart are the ones that seem to struggle the most when it comes to commercial success.
Yeah, it's true, but I'm glad that Scotland's getting its due. You guys are finally getting to enjoy the recognition that the rest of the world has gotten.
Livingston Computer Repair isn't getting all the plaudits now.
Oh, their sales are going to go up. People are going to start rating them on Google Maps and Yelp, and they're going to get the odd, cross commenter who's like really angry because they screwed up his repair, or they lost his computer or something.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a pretty good place to end it. And I feel like that discussion went pretty fast, so I'd say the freewheeling episode of Time Extend was a success. Yeah,
it was good having a less not restrictive, but a less structured format to just talk about random bits and pieces, and it was. I felt as if it was a good episode, and even if the news is light, it proves we can still grumble about everything from racing games to chicken.
Yeah. And why you should save up for that copy of Test Drive Le Mans.
Exactly.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks again for listening, and we will see you again soon.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.